Okay, we're here in northeastern Pasco County. We're a little west of Dade City. We're here at the Mount Zion Methodist Church and Cemetery. The Mount Zion Methodist Church disappeared in 1871 due to a hurricane, collapsed. I don't know of any extant ruins. There certainly isn't anything around here. It was a wood structure, so there really isn't much, if anything at all, that I'm aware of exists. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was obliterated and the wood either deteriorated, burned, or moved off somewhere. Um, we're here for this reason. Of course, always cemeteries are fascinating. But we're here primarily for this Confederate monument dedicated to the memory of the Pasco County pioneers who sacrificed for the cause of the Confederate States of America. And here's this really cool map showing where all there were 17 interments here that they've been able to identify as having served their country. Most of them, almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them came from Georgia. There was one or two from Alabama, a couple from Florida, but most of them came from Georgia. Now, when these people served their country from Georgia and they came back home after the war, they were either paroled or released or whatever their particular individual conditions were, they came back home to find nothing. We see it time and time and time again. That's where most of the Floridians come from, is Georgia, South Carolina, a few from Alabama, some from North Carolina, but typically we see a lot of South Carolinians and a lot of Georgians. Sherman had an almost psychosis, an obsession with Georgia and South Carolina, because South Carolina was called the cradle of the secession. It was there that the secessionist movement began. The South Carolinians had issues with secession going back to the beginning of the states uniting in the late 18th century. So they constantly were rabble-rousing or advocating leaving. They threatened on several occasions to leave. But they're not the only ones. I mean, there's other states and cities and places, even to this day, that have threatened to leave the Union. That's not an aberration or anything. It's just that it was consistent with South Carolina. So South Carolina suffered heavily. And I'm not talking about armies or ports or anything like that. I'm talking about the people, and Georgia as well. And these guys, under Sherman's command, would march through these areas and cut a swath of absolute total destruction for 100 miles on either side. So for 200 or 300 miles, long wide path of destruction. These guys would just ride in, steal everything they could, burn the houses, leave the women and children completely homeless and destitute. And in any case where there were men present, they would just shoot them. So these guys came home to total, utter destruction. They're in their 20s, 30s at the most of them. Not every one of them, most of them. So they would come back and they would find this complete devastation to their homes. So rather than start over at a place where the federal government was very prevalent in terms of occupation, the occupying forces, they would move here. Not necessarily to Dade City, but to Florida in general. And we see it, coast to coast, top to bottom. In spite of what the leftists will now have you believe and the revisionists will now have you believe, these men did not fight to maintain the institution of chattel slavery. That's a fantasy, it's a farce, and it's completely false. It was in no way the driving consideration behind their motivation. They lived in an area where that happened to be going on. So did a million other things happen to be going on. That wasn't the only thing that was going on. It wasn't like slavery was everyone's main focus in life. It was simply part and parcel of their daily lives. So, with that, we have to remember that these people did not come down here to perpetuate that institution. They came down here to relive their lives, to restart their lives. It didn't matter to them one way or the other. They didn't know anything or anybody. They were simply trying to get by. So that's why we're here. We know that in years to come, these graves won't be here anymore. They'll be desecrated. They'll be destroyed. They'll be dug up and left unmarked. And we want to document that they are here, that they were here, that they lived, they fought for their country as they saw it, did their duty, made a life for themselves. And amongst being soldiers, they were also, farmers, doctors, lawyers, ranchers, sea captains. I mean, on and on and on. The list of professions goes on and on. They weren't simply defined solely by their having been a soldier. But that seems to be what they'll get blamed for. In any event, we're going to continue on here and document this marvelous site. UDC has done a terrific job as usual. The Augusta Jane Evans Wilson chapter, UDC. And the SCV is part of this too. I didn't realize that when I first read it, but I just did realize it. This is a neat thing. This is something you don't see very often, if at all. The exact location of each soldier. And we have one second lieutenant, and everybody else is a private. Although that's another thing, the Sumners are buried here. The original pioneers who came here after the war and settled here are here as well. Of course, they were not the original people in this area, but they're significant in terms of their contribution. Here we have Corporal Helveston. He served in World War I, it looks like, possibly World War II. Here's some Tuckers. We saw some Tucker further south, probably about 15 miles south of here. Entire cemetery of Tuckers. This is William Morgan, private, CSA. Get out of here. Oh, and we're not going to document this entire cemetery. This is they're still presently interring the remains of people here. Further that way, there's a lot of more recent interments. All the older ones are back here. This is the old section, and that's what we're primarily interested in, exclusively interested in. There's an old oak tree that's fallen over from the recent storm. They haven't gotten it chopped up out of the way yet. There's a World War II. Oh, there's also an Indian War vet and a Spanish-American War vet in here. I thought that was kind of interesting. So we've already gone through and taken photographs and more or less scoped it all out. Here's Sergeant Jesse Blanton, Company A, 20 Battalion, Georgia Cavalry. Imagine the stories that each one of these soldiers could tell, and there's only 17 of them in here. I've seen at least 5 or 6 cavalry soldiers. That would have been an interesting life. They were used in a different capacity. Well, here's William C. Crum. Captain Leslie's Cow Cavalry. Wow, I didn't see this before when I photographed. Very neat. Very cool. William Crum, Company C, Munnerlyn's Battalion. Munnerlyn's Battalion. Captain Leslie's Cow Cavalry. How very neat. So in 61 he would have been 15, 14. That's why he was in the cavalry. He wasn't old enough, or the Cow Cavalry, he wasn't old enough to serve. In the regular army. The Cow Cavalry was responsible. They did some protecting, but they were primarily responsible for shipping cattle, rounding up cattle and shipping them up there. They were an arm, or not an arm. They served in the cause. They served as soldiers, and they were home guard in essence. There's Island, Bullet Guards, Alabama Infantry. And again, I didn't see every one of these. I've already found two during the video that I did not see earlier. But I saw probably, I've seen most of them for sure. Dadgummit. Doggone spider web. Got me good. I missed it last time. This one got me. One of the coolest things about being out here is a lot of people come out here, so whatever is out here has been out here and will be out here. I should have remembered that from the last time I came through here. I avoided it. Ugh. So these are some older stones here as well. Oh, I wanted to illustrate the iron. With the tree had grown up around the iron on the fencing. That is very neat. More islands. They were apparently a big family here. This is the Sumner portion of the plot. Hudson, Hammond, Sumner. Lovely memory of Bobby Robert Ray, who wasn't even 15 years old, sadly. This is Robert Glenn Sumner, 91 to 29. Mother, Elizabeth Alice Sumner, 1863 born. James Neal Sumner, 1856 born. And I don't see the main Sumner. I didn't even know that these were out here until today. So I have no idea where his interment is. It seems to be right in here somewhere, but there's more Sumners. These are all much, much later. 80s, 90s, early O's. So, but he's got to be here somewhere. I mean, I would think. They probably started all this with him, and they started interring in the 70s. So, not sure when he passed. That's Janie Sumner. So, yeah, not sure about that. I have to look that up, but I know I'm in the same. I'm in the Sumner plot. These are all descendants of his. Oops, more. More spider webs. We're going to walk around. Trying to walk into none of those. There's an interesting fence area. It's made out of oh, here we go. Francis Marion Durrance, 1st Florida Militia, 1st Florida Mounted Militia, 2nd Lieutenant, named after the swamp fox, Francis Marion. This is a neat little fence thing. It's all wood, so it's kept up. Somebody's been doing it. Here's Sergeant Mickler, 2nd Battalion Florida Infantry, CSA. Don't know if I got this one earlier or not. Edmund Ravicis, Alabama. Make sure we get him now. Okay, this is really cool. This, in my opinion anyway, this plot, this metal, this iron has been here for a very long time. And this tree has grown up around it. Rather than, you know, knocking it over, the tree just simply grew up around it. And you can see there's a corner piece that's buried deep into this tree. These are all buried beneath it. I just find that so fascinating. They're just in there. The tree is grown up around it. It is so cool. I've seen that done with tombstone, gravestones. It's pretty interesting as well. Here's more of it. This old oak tree just goes right up around it. Okay, and then I'm going to go down this way. I don't think I've been here yet. Yeah, here we go. This is a private 51st Georgia Infantry. He wasn't even 20 years old when he went in. This here Confederate soldier. It has a flag. You can bet they're going to tear that one out. Anything with a flag is going to be on in the bullseye. There's another one. A couple more. I'm going to shut it down. 11th Georgia Cavalry. William Stanley, 7th Florida Infantry. That was a famous unit. The 7th Florida. Here's another one. 2nd Lieutenant, 7th Florida. Not sure if I showed that one or not earlier. Maybe not. And there's a few others, but I haven't found them. I'm even really looking very hard, but somewhat. I think I might have showed this before. This has a UDC cross on it, which is very cool. And this is William H. Morgan, Georgia Siege Artillery. That is just, that's